Want to know a little bit about how term 2 went? Stay tuned to find out. Hi everyone, and welcome to my journey into becoming Dr. Nanette Varela. My name is Nanette, and we have officially finished our first year of medical school at St. George's University. So here we are on a term 2 recap once again. This term was a lot of ups and downs. Let me tell you, it was a mix of emotions. Okay, so let's run through a little bit of what term 2 looks like. Before we start, I want to remind you, if you like my video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, comment down below if this video was helpful, and stay tuned to check out all the content I have for you guys. So let's talk about a little bit about what term 2 consists of before we start into the nitty-gritty of each module. So we have, again, 3 modules. It's going to be endocrine and reproductive, digestive system, and the nervous system. Of course, we're not going to forget about our lab exam, our OSPE, and at this point, because you will be done with your first year of medical school, you will do your BSCE. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. Let's start with the endocrine and reproductive module. This module was my favorite one because I love so much the reproductive system, and I am like into OBGYN, so I really love this module a lot. So the endocrine consists a lot about all the hormones and all the organs that are consisted of reproducing these hormones to maintain our body, and we include as well the reproductive system in male and female. So this one consists again of one exam. I really like this module a lot. It's mostly about 3 weeks, and it's usually, everyone says it's super easy. Yes, it's easier compared to what you've seen in term 1, being that this is the first module that you will encounter in term 2, but again, you will never take the module as anything less of what it is. So again, you do have to learn all the hormones, all the signaling pathways that are in respect to each hormone upon what they act on their target tissues. And in this module, again, I always do a lot of Anki, and again, I do practice questions. I did a lot of whiteboarding as well here because you do have a lot of hormones, and each hormone has a certain effect, and I organize them throughout each one on a whiteboard. So if that helps you out, it's always really good to do that. Again, there's a lot of anatomy here as well because you are looking at the anatomy of the male reproductive system and the anatomy of the female reproductive system. And again, you gotta know all these little details. So endocrine and reproductive module for me was easy upon what I think. I haven't encountered anything at this point that I could say, oh my god, this is super crazy. But again, knowing the practice questions, knowing all your hormones and everything in respect to that is super important. Now we go into digestive and metabolism. This one is, oh my god, oh Hail Mary, because you will be having about 4 weeks of material. Up to this point, you have never encountered 4 weeks of material in a module. Usually there are about 3 weeks of material, but DM is consisted of 4 weeks of material. And here you will have a lot of biochemical pathways. Let me tell you, this is consisted a big chunk of this exam, especially all the biochem. So I do recommend, I did a lot of whiteboarding and repetition. This is very important for you. Everything that gets inhibited, what gets activated upon what certain conditions the body is in, if it's in a fed state, if it's in a fasting state. So it's very important for you to know all your biochemical pathways for your DM modules. Again, what I did, crucial, was I whiteboarded these biochemical pathways every day, once a day. I took the time to separate it from my normal study schedule, and I said, okay, Nanette, you really need to take time to start writing down these biochemical pathways, all of them, starting from glycolysis, gluconeogenesis, glycogenolysis, lipid metabolism, beta oxidation, the electron transport chain, you name it, everything. You need to know every little detail because you don't know what they're gonna ask you, and it's very duper important for you to know all those pathways. Another part of this module, again, is the anatomy of the digestive system. Again, you will be covering all of the anatomy from the alimentary canal, which would be the moment you have food enter your mouth in the oral cavity, starting from the process of salivation all the way down the esophagus into the stomach, through the small intestines, large intestine, colon, rectum, etc. So again, you will be covering all the anatomy and the histology of the whole alimentary system and digestive system, so it's very important for you to know all your anatomy. Again, how I attack every module is I do my notes for the module. I go ahead and do Anki while I'm doing reviewing the notes. So I will be doing Anki and I will be looking at my notes at the same time so I can connect everything, because Anki sometimes does not have the connections between every module, but it is very important for you to bring in that connection and find multiple routes of learning throughout your module. Once I do these Anki, I will then go ahead and do practice questions. Normally, how I like to do it, I kind of always do it at the end of the week when I've already completed all of the Anki as I go through every lecture. Because I don't really like to do them throughout. If I don't really know at least 50% or 60% of the material, I wouldn't attack the questions, because then I feel like I don't know anything and I don't want to panic myself, because it's very important for you to make sure that you know what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. Okay, so again, practice questions is crucial, like I go by it every single day. Practice questions, practice questions, practice questions. Here you will also have already gone to the lab, as well as for the endocrine and reproductive system. So you will be seeing a couple of things in the laboratory, and that's going to help you reinforce your anatomy. Now let's start with the monster that is composed of term 2. So here we are in the nervous system. So the nervous system module is going to be composed of 3 parts. Here you're going to have 3 exams: NB1, NB2, and NB3. So it will be about 8 weeks of material. Again, there are going to be 3 different block exams, so it's going to be broken down. So let's start with NB1. NB1 is 3 weeks, and this one for me was, I could tell you right now that the hardest thing I've ever encountered was NB1. NB1 was difficult because there was a lot of little technical things that you had to know in respect to all the pathways and motor pathways and sensory pathways that are composed, and where they intersect in the area of the brain stem or in the brain. And you need to know that at certain injury levels, you need to know where is this injury located, depending on the presentation that the patient has. So this was a little bit difficult because every pathway crosses at a certain dissection area in the brain stem, and it was very tedious. If you did not understand these pathways, it was very, very, very hard for you to understand what was going on at the level of these injuries. So these 3 weeks were very, very, very technical. This is the first time that you will ever see anything of the brain. So you will first start with all the anatomy of the brain, the naming of your sulcis and gyri. And these, again, once you see it for the first time, it's very like boom in your face and you're like, wow, how am I ever gonna know this? But the anatomy, again, for me, I'm very good in anatomy, so once I see it, I get scared of it, but I'm like, okay, calm down, you're gonna be fine, you're gonna learn this, it's super easy. Once you learn it, trust me, it is easy. Anatomy is not that hard in my opinion. Again, everyone has different opinions, have different strengths and weaknesses, and you can go on upon what yours are. So NB2 consisted a lot of the anatomy from the head and neck. Anything that had to do with all the triangles here of the neck and all the contents in the triangle. Everything that had to do with face sensory and injuries. That consisted of all the cranial nerves as well, starting from 1 olfactory optic nerve to all the way up to 12. So NB2 was a little bit shorter. I think it was about like 2.5 weeks, and it was really short because it was like the completion of NB1. So I really like that. Again, I'm more into like the anatomy, so I really liked it. Once you go into NB3, you start with psychiatry. I forgot to mention a little bit of NB to include psychology. So everything that had to do with the developmental of the child up to adult, adolescents and adults. So everything that included that was also an NB2. A little bit of the principles of psychology. Once you go into NB3, it was all psychiatric disorders. So everything from your DSM-5 and your categories of all your psychiatric disorders, all your OCD disorders, your personality disorders, your traumatic disorders, everything, and including all the drugs that can be used to help in those disorders. We also went into developmental disorders, those that have to do with being during developmental, so when you're born, or acquired at the end, like Alzheimer's or dementia. So those things were a recap of what the module mainly consisted of. Of course, we cannot forget the lab exam. So the lab exam consisted again of 25 questions that I am in person, and now everyone's coming back in person, so it's going to be the same for everyone. You will have 25 stations, 1.5 minutes around there. I think it's like 80 seconds for you to answer each question. You're going to look at the specimen, identify either it's going to be identify the structure or function, innervation, etc. And that is composed of endocrine, so reproductive, mainly of male and female anatomy, the digestive system, everything that has to do with the abdomen, and neuro with the brain and all the structures on the cranial cavity. So the next big part of term 2 is again, you have OSPE, which are going to be your physical exam, mostly neurophysical examination. Again, like NB1, we do have a lot of physical exams to check that make sure there's no injury at the level of the brain or brainstem. So there is a lot of those. Same as for your psychiatric examination will be included in your physical examination, and a little bit of DM. So that is going to be included in your OSPE. Again, practice makes perfect. So the more you practice, the more you will get familiar with how to do these physical examinations. So grab a friend, start doing all these physical exams when it gets close to your exam, and you will be okay. The next big part here that everyone must be worried at some point is your BSCE, your Basic Science Comprehensive Examination. So this exam is your final exam of your term 2, and it's going to be a cumulative exam from term 1 and term 2. Yes, cumulative. And it is, well, like for me, I do AEP, which is like a tutoring, not tutoring, but it's like a session where you have a couple of lower terms. So I had term 1 students. So I was reviewing term 1 activity throughout term 2. And honestly, it did help me a lot in help not leave any of like information at the end. So I was reviewing a lot of FTM, MSK, and CPR as I went. And then I got another cohort for the April. So I am redoing again what was FTM and MSK at the end of term 2, and honestly it did help a lot. Now I am going to say personally, there is no way you can ever prepare for this test, especially in the time frame that we had. We only had 1 day between our last block exam and our BSCE exam. We only had 1 day to like fully study for BSCE, and you know, you can only do so much in 1 day. And of course, you're preparing for this, I totally recommend not to leave it for the end. Don't take it and don't procrastinate on it, but study as much as you can. Again, you can do some Anki. I did do a lot of Anki and practice questions. At the end, do practice questions. I got that 1 day to just do practice questions, practice questions, practice questions. Look at the histology. A lot of histo popped up that I didn't look at, so definitely look at histology. I forgot about histology, all of it. There was a little bit of FTM. There was a good amount of MSK and CPR. And I did remember a lot of neuro. So there was a little bit of neuro, psych exam, but it was a really big mix. A lot of people told us, oh, it's a big chunk of neuro, big chunk of neuro. No, I don't think it was. It was a good mix, but there was a couple areas where there was a little bit than others. Like for example, MSK, there was a little bit, a lot a lot of chunk of MSK compared to like FTM or like endocrine. And it's definitely, there's no way where you could focus specifically, but just make sure you look at all the big high yield information that they give us, all your disorders. Take a look of that histology, don't leave that behind. It was a big chunk of it that I didn't personally look at, but not to worry, okay? It's always very good for you to be prepared for not, so it doesn't get you like at the lower ends of the spectrum, but you will be okay, okay? So definitely study for it. Don't leave it for the end. Don't procrastinate. Take a look a little bit on everything, all your biochemical pathways. Take a look at them as well. There wasn't a much of DM that I remember, but again, look at everything that has to do big high yield things that you. So I want to give you a little bit of a recap of how I do. Remember, I take my own notes. I do Anki. I whiteboard, and I mainly cover a lot of practice questions. So I finished the whole entire year of medical school with honors, and I am so proud of myself, and I am so proud of all my colleagues and my friends for getting to where we are today. So I hope you guys enjoy this term 2 recap. If you have any other questions, feel free to answer them in the comments or DM me on Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time.